What is up, everybody? We're back here, King Film Sports, for the NFL Week 16 betting locks and game picks here as we are coming up on the final 3 weeks of the NFL season here. Went by so quickly, but we do have some very interesting scenarios regarding the playoff picture. Check out my analysis of the playoff picture and my predictions for how I think it will all unfold for the next 3 weeks. You guys really loved that video, up to 25,000 views, so be sure to like and subscribe to the channel here and comment your predictions down below on this video as well. So without further ado, let's get into the recap of a pretty entertaining week number 15, especially that late window on Sunday. That was electric. And we started out with the Thursday game, which was really not that whatsoever, as the Niners -2.5. Look, I did not know that this game was going to be a rainstorm in the first half, and that probably played to the Niners' advantage, but they dropped a couple huge potential interceptions against Matthew Stafford in the first half. If any of you guys were watching, those would have really turned the tide of the game there. Instead, it's 3-3 at the half. The Niners keep forcing the ball to Debo. He keeps not making plays. A huge drop near the red zone area, which would have given them the lead. And ultimately, the Rams get it going late. Purdy throws a late interception there, so the Rams get the win 12-6 there. Just a brutal bet for us on the -2.5 and an ugly loss. Then the next lock, we had the Jets -3 against the Jags, and this one admittedly got very lucky. It probably would have gotten slightly lucky to push because the Jags and the Jets were nip and tuck all game. Didn't really look like the Jets were going to even push, but touchdown and 2-point conversion to give them a 3-point lead late. Then the Jags go up and tie it, and then the Jets, the connection between Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams was huge here as they connect for a big play on the last drive and then score the touchdown when they could have ran the clock down to 20 seconds. I obviously love that as someone who had the Jets -3 or anyone who had the -3.5, but I'm not sure that you just run the clock down to 20 seconds there because the Jags only need the field goal. So what, you only need to move 25, 30 yards to get the field goal in 20 seconds? I mean, that's not out of the question from what we've seen this year. So I don't mind them getting the touchdown there. They're just a 3-win team at that point, so let them play it out, and they end up getting the touchdown and covering that spread. That was great. Then another miracle cover here. We had the Cardinals-Patriots over 46. I really like this one, and at the half, I mean, I felt like it was getting pretty unlucky. I think the Patriots missed a field goal early, and then the Cardinals were settling for a bunch of field goals, so I think the score was around 13-3 late. In the third quarter, really nothing happened there. I think Kyler Murray even got injured. He was out for a series in this game, and Drake May and the Patriots offense wasn't doing anything in their own right there. But then it really got going late as the Patriots defense just gave in. The Cardinals scored 2 touchdowns in the fourth quarter, and the Patriots scored a couple as well, and we barely hit the over in this one with a couple late scores. Man, was that a glorious over, especially when considering this next game, which was one of the most brutal beats of the season here. Yes, this was just a crazy week. We had the Colts +5.5 in this game. I know it says the Broncos on the screen, but we did have the Colts. They were the underdog in that game. And a lot of you guys probably got them at +4 or +3.5 in this game. I still like those numbers because I thought they were going to win this game outright. They needed it coming off of the bye for their playoff hopes, and they were running it down Denver's throat early. Denver just could not stop the run. Bo Nix was turning the ball over. Colts defense was actually playing well. They're up 13-7. Jonathan Taylor appears to score a touchdown, but he drops the ball before going in the end zone. That's just brutal for the team there. And then the Broncos score 24 unanswered, including a botched trick play where the wide receiver is throwing it back to Anthony Richardson across the field, and Denver returns it for the touchdown. That was really just an epitome of this second half here after the Colts absolutely just choked away their season in this game to the Broncos there. So a brutal bet where we have the 5.5 and lose, and the Colts end up losing 31-13 in this game. So it ends up not even being close there. Just absolutely wretched beat there. Then next we got to the Bucks +3 against this Chargers team. This one was a very interesting game early, and then the Bucks just kind of took control in that second half. The Chargers just didn't have any answers because they can't really run the ball without J.K. Dobbins, and Justin Herbert even got banged up in that second half. And that Bucks defense was able to do enough, and that offense is just really dynamic with the ground game. Rashad White and Bucky Irving, and that offensive line holds up. Then you get Mike Evans, Jalen McMillan, some of these guys downfield. Baker Mayfield playing great football right now, so not only cover the 3, but win in a blowout there in SoFi Stadium. And then we had the Packers -2.5. This was just free money. I didn't expect it to be this easy on Sunday night as the Packers just ran it down the Seahawks' throats in this game. Jordan Love looked magnificent. The Seahawks kind of got a little going in that second half, but really were never in this game. And then Geno Smith gets injured late in that game. Still kind of questionable whether he's going to play in this next week. I know Sam Howell didn't look great when he came in. I think with a full week of practice, he would be better, or Geno hobbled. We'll see in this next week against Minnesota, as we will chronicle in this video. And then the Monday night doubleheader, these games were just horrid as well, but we had the Bears +7 points against the Vikings, and this one got dashed early on as this Bears offense just could do nothing. Offensive line couldn't hold up for Caleb, and Caleb wasn't doing well. against this tough Minnesota defense. And then Sam Darnold was having his way with the Chicago defense. So just a tough spot there for the Bears, and they cannot cover the 7 points. Really wasn't very close in that one. And that brings us to week number 16 here. Let's get into my betting locks. And we started out with the Broncos plus the 3 here against the Chargers on Thursday night. And I know that the Broncos got very lucky in that win against the Colts, as we just discussed. I mean, I definitely think the Colts should have won that game. But Bo Nix throwing the 3 interceptions against that Colts defense at home, I think that he will play a lot better here against this Chargers defense. Remember, they played, I think, in October, and he did not look good, especially in the first 3 quarters. Kind of some window dressing late in that game. I think that he, in this Broncos offense, plays a lot better. I think Sean Payton will dial up a great game plan on this short week against this Chargers team. And the Chargers really banged up. As we mentioned, that running game isn't really working, and this Broncos defense is probably the strength of the team. That front 7 really got it going, and they stopped the run against the Colts, which is really what won that game. So I just expect a grinded out type affair. And Chargers, as we mentioned, Justin Herbert injuring that ankle once again. Could he be hobbled in that game if the Broncos get a couple hits on him? That is always a concern for this Chargers team. So I just expect a dogfight of a game here. You're giving me the 3 points with Denver, who I acknowledge may be slightly worse in the aggregate, but the Chargers, just given this situation, I think are in a great spot. I do think that they potentially can win this game outright as well that Thursday night. That should be a great game there. Then we get to the Saturday slate here. These 2 games going against the college football playoff games, obviously, as well, and they matter a great deal, as we discussed with the playoff picture analysis in the AFC this week. And we have the Texans and Chiefs. And when I made the last video a couple days ago, it looked like Patrick Mahomes was not going to play. Texans spread was about -2.5 or -3, where we were expecting Carson Wentz to play. Well, now it is almost completely flipped to the Chiefs being favored by 3 or 3.5. So give us the Texans plus 3.5 here. I do not think that Mahomes is going to be right. Remember, they're getting one less day of prep here on this short week. And even at home, I just think that this Texans defense, who did play pretty well against Tua and the Dolphins last week, maybe we're seeing a resurgence there from that Texans defense. And then their offense, I mean, they didn't do much in this game, but they did what was required in that one to take advantage of the Dolphins' mistakes here. I think they can do something similar, whether it be Patrick Mahomes hobbled on that ankle or Carson Wentz that we see in this game. I'm just not sold that this Chiefs team is going to be right in this game. We already know that they've been struggling a lot. They hadn't covered in 7 straight weeks going into that Cleveland game, and then that was a very sloppy one. If it weren't for a couple fortuitous mistakes by this Browns team, the Chiefs could have not covered that game or potentially lost. So I just think that even at home, in a tough environment for this Houston team, who have been dormant for the past few weeks, kind of underwhelming, I think this is a good spot for them. I think this one goes under the total as well, and we see a dogfight of a game coming down to the last possession here, and I think that the Texans cover and win outright in that one. Next, we get to a similar type game, AFC North battle for the number 1 spot here between the Steelers and the Ravens. Yes, Steelers would still be ahead if the Ravens won this game, but obviously huge coming down the pike for the end of the season. Give us the Steelers plus the 6.5 and the under 45 in this one. Just think it's going to be a grind of a game, and I know the Steelers lost at the Eagles last week. I do not think that this will be the same as that. I think that the Steelers will be reinvigorated. I think that the offense will play a lot better because that Eagles defense is much better than this Baltimore defense. Remember, the Eagles and Ravens played a couple weeks ago. Eagles had their way in that one as well. So I just think that the Steelers team off of the bounce back here against this Ravens team who they beat already this season. And we know that these AFC North games, specifically the Steelers-Ravens matchup, always comes down to the wire here. We know it is usually a 1-possession game, comes down to a field goal late. So I just love all of the candy that I'm getting with the Steelers plus 6.5. Mike Tomlin, great as an underdog throughout his career as the head coach. And then the under 45. Russell Wilson, yes, not inspiring last week. And I know that this Ravens defense isn't great, but maybe the Steelers can get to 20 points, but that might be the maximum in this game. And then the Ravens, we know that they struggled in Pittsburgh earlier this season. I'm not buying it from that big blowout win against the Giants last week. So I think that they'll be held under about 24 points in this game. So I think that all signs lead to the under in a physical AFC North matchup. Next, we get to the Sunday slate, and we started out here with a 2-12 Giants team and a Falcons team who just benched Kirk Cousins in favor of Michael Penix. What a move there. After earlier this season, Kirk was looking great. He had that great drive against the Eagles in week 2 on Monday night to steal a victory, and then had a couple huge games against Tampa. But the last 5 weeks, he's been obviously atrocious with the 1 touchdown and 9 turnovers. But in this game, I will take the Falcons to win this one. If you can get 10 or 10.5 with this Giants team, I don't hate it here, as Brian Dable, he probably is hearing all the noise, and this team probably really wants to win. And the Falcons really ugly showing against Las Vegas, even though they won that game on Monday night. Coming in off the short week here, Michael Penix in his first start, I think that he'll be fine, but I don't think the Falcons blow out here. Give me them to win close. Then we get 2 locks in this Cardinals-Panthers game. Give us first the Panthers plus the 4 points. Cardinals going across the country to a Panthers team that had played great, even though they only have 3 wins. The last 3 weeks, they were all really close. And then the Cowboys game, they just got skull-drugged. And I think it was really a situation in which they got unlucky with the turnovers there. So I do love the Panthers plus the 4 in a big bounce-back spot at home. I think Bryce Young gets back to his ways, and I think that this Panthers offense clicks in this game. They score at least 24 points in a kind of shootout style game against this Cardinals team. Kyler Murray in his own right, I think, will put up numbers against this Panthers defense. So I think that we'll kind of see a shootout game. This is what I was predicting for the Cardinals Patriots last week. Didn't really materialize in the first three quarters, but you saw it in the fourth quarter. So I think that we get that full game effort here between these two teams. I expect this one to be very thrilling and entertaining there. So give us the Panthers plus the 4 and the over in that matchup. Next, we get to a very interesting NFC North game. Remember, we saw this one between the Lions and the Bears on Thanksgiving in Detroit, and the Lions win late and obviously have all the late game shenanigans with Eberflus not calling timeout. Well, in this one, it's looking very dire for potentially both of these teams. Bears on the 8-game losing streak, and the Lions, seemingly everyone is getting injured on that defense, and then they lose David Montgomery for the season there, so they really need to right the ship here. I think they do against this atrocious Chicago team, but don't forget, they only have 3 games outdoors this whole season. The first was in Lambeau, where they really dominated that Packers team. Then there's this one in Chicago in December. This is never an easy game, and then next week they go to San Francisco. That one shouldn't be too difficult there, but definitely need to win all these games to retain the number 1 seed here, and I think that it might be closer than a lot of people think here, as the Bears have gotten blown out the last couple of weeks, but I think they are due for a good performance here. So I wouldn't be shocked if this one was really close or the Bears had a chance in this one, but give us Detroit. Then another divisional matchup, AFC South. Give us the Colts to beat this Titans team. I'm not sure whether it's going to be Mason Rudolph or Will Levis in this matchup. Frankly, they both stink here. It's just a matter of how this Colts team responds to a really brutal loss that we've talked about against Denver last week. But Colts thoroughly the better team here and at home. So assuming that Richardson is not completely horrendous, which is not off the table in this game. I mean, we could see just an absolute turnover affair. I'm talking 4 or 5 turnovers apiece in this game if it gets ugly. But if that does not happen and the Colts can kind of rein it in a little bit and run it down the Titans' throats, I definitely think the Colts are the better team. This spread has came down to 3.5 in this matchup. I mean, I might have to move on this game if the Colts are only laying 2.5 or maybe 3, because I think that they're definitely the better team than Tennessee. Next, we get to the Rams and the Jets. This one is an ugly one, but give us the Jets plus 3.5 on their home field against this Rams team who are riding high and coming off the long week here. But I just think this is a situation in which Jets had 2 games on the road, now coming back home, and a little bit of mojo for Aaron Rodgers and his team. As I talked about last week, they really want to win this game. This core, this defense, who has been bad all season, they want to improve in this game against this Rams offense. It was patchwork last week. Cooper Kupp obviously didn't even get into the stat sheet there, so I do think that they'll be able to stop him and Kyren Williams in that run game. I do not think that the Rams will get past 24 points in this one, and I do think Aaron Rodgers is due for another very big game. He really wants it. He wants to be in this league next year as well, so he's kind of auditioning for that. So I just think that this Jets team getting too much value here, plus 3.5 at home against this Rams team who are kind of doomed for a trap spot here. So I do think that this is a very close game. Give me the Jets to win outright as well. Yes, I'm calling for the outright upset there. Then we get to another entertaining game, Eagles and Commanders. I'm calling for the outright upset again. Give us the Commanders to beat the Eagles here. I don't have a lock on it just yet. Might add one later this week if we can get the Commanders plus 3.5 or plus 4. But I just think Eagles 10-game winning streak flying too close to the sun here. We've seen it a numerous amount of times with this team where they look just spectacular, and then they have these shocking results where they do get away with wins, but I do not think that they'll be able to be so fortunate in this game. Remember when they blew out the Ravens a few weeks ago, then the next week they barely hold on against the Panthers and then look great last week against the Steelers. They just had some brutal performances at points in this season here, so I think that this Commanders team, who looked really shaky in New Orleans last week, barely got away with the victory there with the 2-point conversion miss from the Saints. I think that they play a lot better. They were really dominating that game for 3 quarters, so I do think that they play well in this game, punch their ticket into the playoffs, and keep their hopes alive for the NFC East here. So I'm expecting a really interesting game between these two teams. Maybe the Eagles can lean on them the whole game and kind of dominate them physically, but I just don't see it in this matchup in Washington. I think that the Commanders show some fight there. Then we are taking the under 47 in the battle for Ohio between the Browns and the Bengals here. I know that Jameis Winston has been really bad these last couple of weeks with the turnovers for the Browns, but he's definitely better than Dorian Thompson-Robinson in the aggregate, and he could definitely win them this game without some of the turnovers here, but they do bench Jameis in favor of DTR, so I just think this Browns offense is probably back to the way we saw it with Deshaun Watson, just very conservative, and I honestly cannot project them to get 20 points, even against this horrendous Bengals defense. I just think it's going to be that type of game here, and then the Bengals, I just think they'll play it more conservative. Remember, we saw these two teams play earlier this season, and it was kind of a grinded out type affair. That was the game, obviously, that Deshaun Watson did tear his Achilles, and it was 21-14 Bengals there. So I do think that it's going to be one of these AFC North games that is very physical there, and I think it goes under the total. Then we get to this Vikings at Seahawks game. Give me the Vikings for the time being here against the Seattle team. Obviously, a lot of uncertainty. Geno Smith, will he play or will it be Sam Howell? I'm not really sure there. I think this is a big trap spot for this Vikings team who are riding a little too high at 12-2 here off the short week. Great win against Chicago here. I definitely think it could be close, and a lot of people think, and Seahawks obviously get embarrassed on primetime there. So I do think it's a good Seattle spot, but we'll monitor who is playing quarterback. But definitely think that the Vikings win, but it may be close in that one. Then we get to the NFC East game, Patriots at the Bills here. Josh Allen obviously looks to have a stranglehold on the MVP, but I'm taking the Patriots plus the 14.5 here. I know that in a lot of these games where there's been double-digit favorites, the favorite has just gone on to dog walk the other team. But I think this is a time where the underdog has some fight and will be able to keep it close here with this Patriots team, because I know that they looked horrible in the desert last week against the Cardinals, but as we've mentioned, they came up in the fourth quarter. Drake May showed us a couple plays, and I'm not sold on this Buffalo Bills defense here. I think that Drake May could potentially surprise and backdoor this one late, or maybe score 20, 24 points with a couple TD drives in the fourth quarter here, because Buffalo, last 2 weeks on the road, against the Rams, they gave up 44 points. Last week against the Lions, they gave up 42 points. So they're not immune to this one. They're not just some dominant defense here. I definitely think that the Patriots can score some points here, so maybe consider their team total over here, or we could see more of an ugly style game. Gerard Mayo getting some criticism, so maybe he makes the defense play a lot better this week. So a lot of pass for this Patriots team against a Bills team that is flying a little too high, a little bit fraudulent now at that 11-3 record after these very entertaining wins here. Expect Josh Allen to also come down to earth a little bit in this divisional matchup there. Then this just absolutely horrid matchup between the Jags and the Raiders. I've got no clue in this game. Give me the Jags to win this game, because if Desmond Ridder starts for the Raiders, he's just so bad. I think he's probably the worst starter in this league. Worse than Mac Jones, who actually played pretty well last week against the Jets. So give me the Jags in that game. Really not a whole lot of confidence. Probably the team that loses this game is better off in the aggregate for the draft position, but we will see there. And then we've got this Niners-Dolphins matchup. Look good in the preseason, but obviously both teams 6-8 now. Playoff chances on life support here. And give me the Dolphins to win this game. There's just so much turmoil with this Niners team. Will they be even trying to win this game? Yes, coming off the long week. Wouldn't shock me if Shanahan had a great game plan in this one and Purdy looked great. So maybe look at an over here, especially Tua on the bounce back after a horrible game last week against the Texans. But we will see in this matchup, just so unpredictable now, because you don't know how these two teams will respond to these adverse conditions and basically being eliminated from the playoffs. Then next we get to this primetime game, Bucks at the Cowboys, and give me Dallas here to cover the 4 points. I think that they could potentially win outright in this matchup as well. As we've talked about, the Bucks offense red hot last week against the Chargers. I think it comes down to earth against this Dallas defense here. Cowboys defense has been playing pretty well these last few weeks here, so I think that it could be more of an ugly style game. And then this Tampa Bay defense against Cowboys offense. I mean, maybe the Cowboys can move the ball a little bit because Cooper Rush has actually been decent these last few weeks, and you've got Rico Dowdle doing work on the ground as well. So I just think this is a great spot for Dallas against a Bucks team. Great win, blowout win against this Chargers team. Bit of a letdown spot for them here, so I definitely expect it to be a close one in Dallas there. And then we get to the Monday night matchup, Saints and the Packers here. Spread is about 14 in this matchup. Give me the Packers to win this game. Maybe a little closer than some people are saying. We'll see who the Saints end up starting at quarterback. Will it be Rattler in that matchup? But Packers coming off that big win in Seattle, they've got to win this one as well for that playoff positioning there. So I do think that they'll just be able to run it down New Orleans' throats there en route to a victory in Lambeau. So with all that being said, let me know what you guys think of my predictions in the comments down below. As always, be sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you all in the next one.